My dad walked in my bedroom and said, "Put your pants on and give me the dog back." Why? I sat up confused. Because I said so. He turned and walked out, leaving me to scramble for my jeans. My hands were shaking as I pulled on yesterday's clothes because I knew exactly what this was about. 2 weeks ago, I'd found a stray puppy behind the 7-Eleven shivering in a cardboard box. He was this tiny brown mutt with one floppy ear and ribs showing through his matted fur. I knew my dad hated dogs and called them useless creatures that just ate money and made messes, but I couldn't leave that puppy there to die. I'd been hiding him in the old tool shed behind our property where Dad never went anymore. Every day after school, I'd sneak out there with food I'd saved from lunch and water in 7-Eleven cups. The puppy had started filling out and would wag his whole body when he saw me coming. I named him Biscuit because of his color and how he'd do anything for a cracker, like Scooby-Doo. The second I stepped out of my room, my dad shoved something hard against my chest. It was his hunting rifle, the same one he'd been trying to teach me to shoot since I turned 13, but I always found excuses to avoid it. "Show me where the dog is." His voice had this scary calm to it, like when he'd found out I'd failed math last year. I wanted to lie and say I didn't know what he was talking about, but the look in his eyes told me he already knew everything. Maybe he'd seen me sneaking food out. Maybe he'd heard Biscuit barking one night. It didn't matter now. I led him across our backyard past Mom's old garden that had turned to shite since she left 3 years ago. My dad walked behind me with the rifle pointed at the ground but ready. My stomach felt like it was full of rocks. I could hear Biscuit inside the tool shed already whimpering with excitement because he knew my footsteps. When I opened the door, he came bouncing out tail wagging until he saw my dad. Then he cowered behind my legs, shaking. "Good. Now today you're going to learn how to be a man." My dad grabbed Biscuit by the scruff and started dragging him toward the open field behind our house. I knew what was coming. This was exactly like when I was 8, and Dad made me watch him put down our old barn cat because it had gone blind. He'd said the same thing about being a man then too. Said real men didn't waste money on vet bills for useless animals. Said real men did what needed to be done without crying like a baby. But I wasn't 8 anymore, and Biscuit wasn't some old sick cat. He was young and healthy and trusted me to protect him. While Dad was setting up his shooting stance and lecturing me about proper rifle handling, I remembered something I'd learned in shop class. Just a tiny adjustment to the firing pin that would cause a misfire. I'd actually done it the night before when I'd snuck into his gun cabinet because some part of me knew this day was coming. Dad positioned Biscuit about 20 feet away and tied his leash to a fence post. The puppy was crying and trying to pull free, but the rope held tight. My dad handed me the rifle and stood behind me adjusting my stance. His breath smelled like coffee and cigarettes. "Safety off. Line up the sights. When you're ready, squeeze. Don't pull." His voice was almost gentle, like he was teaching me to ride a bike instead of killing my only friend. I aimed the rifle, but not at Biscuit. I pointed it slightly up and to the left toward the empty field. My finger found the trigger, and I thought about all the times my dad had called me soft. All the times he'd said I needed to toughen up and stop acting like my mother. All the times he'd killed something just to prove he could. When I pulled the trigger, the rifle exploded backward. The modified firing pin caused the chamber to rupture, and the stock slammed into my shoulder and face with way more force than a normal shot. I felt something tear in my collarbone, and hot metal embedded itself in my cheek. The pain was instant and overwhelming. I hit the ground screaming. Through the tears and blood, I saw Biscuit break free from his leash and run toward the woods. My dad was yelling something, but my ears were ringing too loud to hear. All I could think was that Biscuit got away. He was alive and running free, and that made the burning pain worth it. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital with bandages covering half my face and my arm in a sling. The nurse said I was lucky the rifle malfunction hadn't killed me. That another inch and it would have hit my neck artery. I asked about my dad and she got this uncomfortable look. There was a backpack next to my bed with some of my clothes stuffed inside. On top was a note in my dad's messy handwriting. "You live with your Aunt Clementine now. You're no son of mine." I never saw him again. Aunt Clem picked me up 2 days later and drove me to her house 3 states away. She never asked what really happened and I never told her. Sometimes I still dream about Biscuit running through those woods finally free. I hope he found a family that deserved him.